This conference will now be recorded.
That was from like 4 years ago. Like, it was there.
I must have like saved them or something. This is gonna make it much easier.
All right. We ready? Oh, no, let's not. Because the secretary just left the room.
I did my homework, but I have most physical addresses, but not all. You weren't here. Yeah. I got it. Lyndon was cutie stuff. I called her just to tell her that her.
Thanks.
I don't think there's anything planning for related. Yeah. So when we do a read board, we should probably put on it that Bottle Barn will be closed on.
And maybe we could post my office hours, so I don't get Sunday morning phone calls. Just for,
They're all
not
here.
for like town council, but for business. Yeah, that. Yeah.
Board members do that, I'm like, oh, I don't mess that up. School election, I have to.
It's okay, Ginger. I'll just do a Word document. Clean it up later. Don't worry about it. Just like overcome it and adapt to instantly.
Yes.
Wait, what's going on with you?
What?
Why don't you have a bunch of garbage strewn all over the place?
It's organized.
It's early yet.
Give me a minute. It'll be there.
Odd.
Well, we usually have Maria at the end, so we're tighter. It's fine.
Oh, true.
Okay, you got your document
I have
open?
a pen and a piece of paper.
Your document one open?
I don't have the Wi-Fi key and I can't log into guest. Let me log in. So, Ginger is texting John. And I have. Go ahead.
Okay. She's like, I got this anyway. Doesn't matter. All right. Oh, roll call. Craig.
Here.
Tina.
Here.
Nikki. Ready. Corey.
Here.
In the room. Let's do the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Approval of the April 13th minutes.
Give it to Craig.
Craig with the second. All right. Comments, corrections, additions? Nope. Calling the vote. Craig. Calling the vote.
Oh,
Tina. Nikki.
Aye.
Brandon.
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Approval of the minutes of the April 23rd work session. Move to approve.
Second.
All right. Tina with the motion.
And Brandy. So Brandy seconded it. Tina. Thank you.
And calling the vote. Aye.
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 Okay. Now onto public comment on non-agenda items. If you have a comment on a non-public agenda item, please stand to the mic. State your name for Karen. You have to turn on.
Wow, we need a shorter mic.
Sharon Christensen, I live at 631 Nicole Way. And there is an alley that's grass between. Okay, so my alley is paved. And the alley as it goes to Conway Way is grass. Apparently, the owner of the, I don't know what the address number is, I'm sorry, Dave Shank's house, thinks that that alley is his, a part of his yard. And so he's piled the limbs off of the willow tree across it so nobody can drive through it. I know the rules enough to know that once every 365 days, somebody needs to drive through there to keep it a public access, I believe. It doesn't make any difference because the problem is the willow tree itself has grown over into that alleyway and down so that a fire truck could not make access there. That wasn't the fire chief that told me that, but it was fire chief's son. And I believe it needs to be addressed. We have a problem on the other side, as you know. John Bancroft was 90 degrees from the alley and 90 degrees from the alley I'm speaking of, has his big pine trees on it that block that fire lane through there, along with the fact that there's one fence and one residence in that alley that was put in a long line and has never, it needs to be addressed that when it's replaced, it needs to be put back on the right line. Because you're going to have a problem there with fire access. I own an apartment building and a house on Nicole Way. And that apartment building does not have an alley in the back across it because of the other neighbor. But it would need to use both those alleys, my paved alley and that grass alley, if there was a bad fire. So it's something that needs to be addressed. I believe that the person that bought that property, the Shane property, for lack of it, probably was told that that was part of they're paying taxes for it, but it is a dedicated alley. And I believe it needs to be addressed, that it needs to be made fire accessible. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll get there. All right, second call for public comment on non-agenda items. Last call for public comment on non-agenda items. Anything from online? All right, moving on to agenda. First one is at our April 13th meeting. We had the resolution 589, acting on the water PER. We tabled it and have not amended it due to the work session discussion. So I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't dropped, but I have not amended it because I think that during an annexation process, part of that water report is going to be, I would anticipate, asked for payment in lieu of water rates. See what I'm saying? We don't have enough water to produce for the hospital. We have a well that takes $1 million to finish. We've already put our portion into that. So that's why it's saying that rather than seeking SRLF funds or loan or any portion of that, and it would be part of annexation, which the hospital said they are anticipating something like that. So have it on there to continue for it to be tabled until.
Thank you for clarifying.
That makes sense?
Yes.
I have reasons for the weird things that I do sometimes.
Yeah, I couldn't remember what it was. I was.
So it
Thank
has to be rewritten and identified. So we'll, before we go through that annexation, which is going to be probably towards the end of summer, we'll revisit how the finance will go of the water report. See. Okay.
So you're saying we're basically gonna leverage this proposed annexation to have them have water rights in place, like an active well going at the hospital?
No.
No,
No.
they're gonna have to pay us if they want us to annex them. A good portion of what we need to come up with for water. Yes,
Yes.
it's their responsibility.
Towards the 1 million or towards that whole package that we prioritized?
We'll have to review the package. But the limiting factor for annexation is water production. So.
But just for clarification, like that property is not something that anyone's gonna explore any water on because it's
Hot.
not good water, yeah.
It's hot. All right. So, no, then that's why I didn't have any discussion vote. Because we're leaving it tabled until it's rewritten in a format that makes it good for 10 years. A solid 10-year financial plan. Okay. All right, on to new business. Maria's not here, but she presented us with the resolution 572-2022 that we adopted. But then due to how Black Mountain software works, we basically can't bill according to that resolution because of the words following the due date. So we'd like to amend 576 to strike those words.
I make a motion to amend the resolution 572-2022, striking the words following the due date.
I second.
Randy with motion, Craig with the second. All right, public comment? Once? Twice? Last call for public comment? Seeing no public comment, closing that. Any other discussion? Questions? All right, calling the vote. Nikki, you're up.
Right.
I
Motion carries to amend 572, which now becomes 576. I didn't even write on it. So I can sign it. Woo-hoo. All right, on to Resolution 590, 2023. This is a budget amendment to increase water expenditures. This is YouTube.
Oh, this, yeah, this was due to like the water break downtown and subsequent problems following that with valves. wasn't a scheduled fix, so it wasn't okay to use it for ARPA money, or use ARPA money for it. And there was not enough budgeted to cover these expenses, so thus you do a budget amendment to cover those expenses for the repairs, and the water system does, or water fund does have enough money, has ample money to cover. Does that make sense?
And that's standard procedure?
Yes.
Is it 15,000 over our budgeted amount that we have?
75,359.
Over.
Was from the previously budgeted amount was like 50,000 or 55,000 and
I
we're,
believe so.
okay.
So we're budgeting enough to cover this, plus possibly have to carry us through with some other funding through the end of the year. So the budget amendment covers the entire expense for those repairs. That way, if something else comes up, we still have a little original budget money to cover.
Any other questions? All right, public comment. Second call for public comment. Last call for public comment. You in the front row. All right, so that's public comment closed. On to commission. You have that face. She's like, no. Question? Clarification? No. Okay.
The total was 75,000, yeah? for
Yes.
everything? Okay.
It's less than a newish Corvette. I think the Corvette would have been more fun, but. All right. Any other discussion, comments?
I make a motion to approve resolution 590-2023, a budget amendment, resolution to increase water expenditures.
Second.
Yes. All right, call the vote.
Aye.
I,
Didn't write on that one either. All right. On to resolution 591, resolution of intent to adopt ordinance 154, which generally amends town zoning code to remove the reference of medical marijuana. That's it. So we adopted the county's code for, Eric, will you grab the door, please? Last year, it sets forth regulations of distances and everything else. And that all went in and business, but all over in the zoning, it still says the word medical, which it doesn't change anything other than clarifying the code between the two. Pretty much. Is that
Put
okay?
us all the same now.
Yeah. So it makes it consistent through the whole book, not just section to section. All right. Public comment. Let's turn somebody else. Public comment going twice. Last call for public comment. Commission.
I make a motion to approve resolution 2023-154. Right?
We're doing the
Ordinance.
resolution 591.
Okay, fine. Move to approve the resolution 591-2023. Second.
You're not gonna get any tonight, are you? All right, any other comment, commission? All right, call and vote. Corey?
I,
Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Next one on the docket. Where are we? Resolution 592.
Regulations.
Resolution of intent to adopt Town Ordinance 155, repealing and replacing Title 8, Public Ways and Property, Chapter 6, Camping Regulations, Sections 861 through 8610. So through a clerical error of that document being changed 4, 5, 6 times, a portion was lost to the codifiers, so. We have. What? Yes. All right. Didn't write on it.
Yeah.
So. Okay. Here. Is the resolution.
Fix that.
Look at.
Is it on him now or is it on us? Is it on him or is it on us? Good question.
Changes in our book again.
What?
After this, we
Do we
will.
have changes in our book again?
Yes.
Okay.
These are all the resolutions. Then we get to go into actual public hearing on each one. It's a change to the budget. So this is not like, oh, magically done. This is now we get to go through 2 public hearings.
So, you're looking at me?
No, not really. Everybody keeps saying my face is gonna stick like this. I'm pretty sure it didn't used to look like this.
I feel like you were wanting me to say something.
But I feel like I should have like some, like, maybe butterfly strips or something. So that I can't do that. Face is gonna stick like that. Okay, no. I thought it was only if you like you slap somebody on the back. Wasn't that the wives' tale? Then your face would stick like that.
Thank you.
From watching my back.
I only have one pen to throw.
And you need that.
Thank you.
Yes.
816 on the second page.
December 8th, 2022 seems like forever ago.
816.
I remember where it was at.
861 through 8610.
I don't see 861 or 862.
Those do not change in the repeal and the place. 861 is the purpose, and it's already in there and was not going to change. And then 862 is the definitions. 863 is there.
So you're at 863 through.
64 is there. 66 is in the book, and 67. 68, 69, and 610 were not adopted.
The only ones we're adopting is 863 through 8610.
There were no changes but when it went to the codifiers,
what is in the resolution now is what was.
Yes. It's actually not all, I mean, this is it in its entirety now. We were missing. Plain meaning, conflicts, and criminal procedures.
867, 868, and 869.
Yes.
Would you say that again? Plain, what was it, plain meaning?
So 867, 868, and 869. There are no changes to any of the other portion that hadn't already been adopted by ordinance 153 on December 8th.
This is cleanup work.
We've been out there 5 or 6 times.
And there was a missing. when they cleared it out. So this is just cleanup, it's not addressing.
It hasn't changed anything that wasn't already adopted.
Got
And those were mostly the legal terms at the end. For discussion.
Do we have a form and everything for them to fill out?
Yes, John has it. So that is complete as well. So public comment on resolution 592. Second call for public comment on resolution 592. Last call for public comment on resolution 592.
Okay, so maybe I should say, just so I understand the process, so, oh, dang it. Just so I understand the process correctly, if we were wanting to do a permitted camping in the future, we would have to amend this and go through the public comment process, correct?
Mhm.
So this is just cleanup that was addressed afterwards. In the future.
Correct.
Okay, got it. I understand. Thanks.
Run quick, quick.
But if we're going through the public comment process,
Would it be wise to do that all at the same time?
yes.
Back up you go. So would it be, in follow-up, would it be wise to, if we were going to have permitted camping in Lions Park, would it be, this be an appropriate time to do that, so we would have one public comment? Go through the steps.
Correct.
James, would you like to comment on that?
So I believe there was I had to log in and log out because my camera wasn't being recognized, but so I may have missed some of the comments. Essentially, what you're trying to do here this evening is adopt the camping regulation as it was finally drafted. For some clerical error, as Mayor Nikki advises you, the final version never got through the public hearing process, and therefore it was not sent to Sterling codifiers. So what you have in front of you now is the resolution to adopt the final version, which should have been adopted, whenever the camping regulation was passed. There are some substantive changes or additions that are in the final version that were not included in the previous draft. So that's why you're doing this. I think the public comment has something to do with Lions Field. Am I correct?
Correct, James. So if the the Lions Club may feel that permitted camping would be okay at the park. So if we were going to go through the process of repealing and replacing this document, it would probably be most prudent if there was going to be a change or they were to accept that camping, they would want that happen at the same time rather than doing it again later.
My recommendation on that is you have a camping regulation that was essentially approved, minus a few definitions and minus a few enforcement provisions that didn't make it into the final draft. I would suggest that you move forward with this and not cause another month or 2 months of delay as you may decide after public hearing that you don't want any camping in Lions Field Park. And I believe that was what the commission agreed to months ago. They did not want to have the, and let's just be real for a moment. I mean, this is about regulating overnight homelessness that is an accommodation that you have to provide under the current law of the land, that if you do not have sufficient shelters for the homeless people, you cannot prohibit them from sleeping in
On
public,
public property.
right, on public property. Now, the issue as to whether or not you want to allow the camping, this type of homelessness camping to be permitted in Lions Field, I think is something for further discussion. You could easily amend, and you would have to amend not only this regulation, but you also have regulations for Lions Field Park as well. I would suggest you proceed with what you have in front of you tonight, and if you want to later come back and make an amendment, you could do so based on information that you develop as to how many people need to have accommodations for this type of homelessness camping in the town. You may find that it's not suitable to have them camping next door to town hall. But then again, you might have people from Lions Field Park that just, they don't want it there. I don't know. I just say that you do it as an amendment further down the line.
Okay, thank you. I'm just, if you have any other public comment, I don't want to close it.
Okay, no, I would agree with that. I don't think we're necessarily on board with opening it up to camping. I think it opens Pandora's box. So I unofficially represented the Lions Club mostly as my personal opinion more than because I haven't reviewed it with the entire Lions Club. I think we should move forward with not adding, not changing anything and move forward with having it correct.
Okay.
Can I make a comment right now?
Yeah, well, you're not public comment. Your commission comment. All right. He's like, I want to be on that side for a minute. Okay.
The homeless cyclist.
Okay. So commission comment.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, it's commission comment.
Okay.
Question,
No,
comment.
basically, I've, being a cyclist myself, have, there's different organizations in towns that actually like make accommodations or set people up. And Lions clubs are one of those organizations in cities around the United States that can, if we were to give them the power to, like, hey, a group of cyclists are coming to town, and we ultimately give you guys the authority to kind of weed out. Now, if the Rainbow Coalition's coming to town, you could absolutely be like, yeah, no, we're obviously not going to allow them that. But I think it's kind of a cool thing, whether it's like a church that does this and allows cyclists to camp on the church's property, or a Lions Club organization that basically kind of mistakes, I guess, because who do people contact when their plans coming through town? Do they contact the town hall or possibly they contact the local Lions Club and just,
Kiwanis.
they're just looking for a space for a night. So, and we do live in a tourist town. So.
So in conclusion, you were saying your opinion is what?
That I would like to see you guys have like basically an authority in that realm, whether we run it through the town.
I'm just trying to figure it out how.
But yeah, I guess I don't know. I would like to like look at how other towns are basically set up, other Lions groups, how they facilitate that. And this homeless thing was, I mean, it was spreading our way. So, the
Right.
town acted.
It's just complicated because because we were told at the last meeting that we can't discriminate. So if we can't discriminate, I don't know
How do we-
how an ordinance can allow us to discriminate if we can't discriminate.
That'd be a James question. I don't see.
The ordinance doesn't. You would have to, there's going to be a way to. So are the cyclists in a specific club?
They are, but we found a home for them, so we're not worried about it short term. This isn't a short term problem. Let's solve it correctly long term.
Yeah. Because I'm with Corey, like I love Twin Bridges setup, like a lot. So you have to take a picture of your bike, you with your bike, and you send it, and then they have actually building there with showers and rest rooms, and then you get a specific code based on that you have that's sent to you so that you can get in. And I think that's a very clever way of allowing cyclists, since we're on a bike tour path.
Yeah, the administrator of that is basically the town clerk in Twin Bridges, Christie. Does that, sends out the code to access the bike camping area.
And they're literally here for a night. So
Can I ask you all, what do you have on your books as far as gathering permits or event permits? How do you guys handle that? Special events, protest rallies.
with the user agreement,
In your business license?
no, there's a user agreement for public ways use.
Okay, let me grab my book.
So, for example, tap into Ennis, that's gonna.
It's not in the book.
It's a user agreement.
It's not in your town code book.
Yes, and the mayor signs off or does not, chooses to sign off or something, right?
Yes.
Like tap, yeah.
Like an example was they wanted to do a fun run starting on the 4th of July. A company based out of Missoula. I know how many resources we have, and I said, sorry, doesn't go any further. We can't accommodate that because of the time of day, the traffic load through town. So I gave them the reasons why that's not going to happen, because they wanted to use, again, the park as their launch point on the 4th of July to run. So no, we already have enough fun that day without runners and traffic and horses and whatnot. So
Create executive decisions.
there's
So-
agreements like that come through, and John reviews them and I review them to make sure that there's no town violation or safety violation. Pretty
So
much.
you have nothing, you do not have a town code
And
that
they are
regulates gatherings, parades, events. You do not have that in your town code. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so then how are you regulating these events?
Like she just said, she signs off on them or approves them, goes over to John Moore with them and approves them or denies them.
On the
Okay.
user agreement.
A user agreement. What's the
Yes.
basis for the, okay, I guess my question is, what is the basis, where you're finding the authority to create a user agreement? It'd be, let's say, just for example, if you didn't have a business license code, town code for business licenses, and you just, people came in and they're like, okay, I want a business license sort of user agreement to do business, but there's nothing in your town code. I'm just asking the question, where's the authority? Where, do you have a policy that's created for these user agreements that ties back into some legislative act that, or title?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay,
Okay,
so
I'll look into that.
add
Carrying
that,
on.
thank you.
Point of order. Put that on my hot list. Okay.
So
back to-
James, just out of curiosity, is that how we could
Yeah.
address this?
Mhm.
Is what you're suggesting? Like where the Lions Club could actually,
Sure, you guys could make an amendment. Well, first of all, you need to have some sort of provision that addresses the idea of having these, what you would call a mass gathering, a public event, a parade, a protest rally, okay? And, if you want to use your bicycle touring example, yes, you could pass a code that then allows you to create your administrative rules and process for issuing permits, requiring them to, identify who's in charge of the event, what insurance do they have in place, what is the duration of the event, the time, the place. And you could add in there a rule that allows you to suspend the anti-camping or the camping prohibition in Lionsfield Park, depending on the nature of the event and where they want to hold it. But right now, you have on your books a prohibition against camping in Lionsfield, vehicle camping, and any other sort of camping by individual persons, tents, RVs. That's on your books right there in the public ways chapter. And with this law that you're about to pass, ordinance that you're about to pass, it also states again that you cannot have camping any place other than as designated in this ordinance. So, I would suggest that you guys decide what you want to do with this particular ordinance right now, and then we could go back to some of these issues during my legal update.
Okay. So back to 592.
I make a motion to approve resolution 592-2023, resolution of intent to adopt Ennis Town Ordinance 2023-155, repealing and replacing Title 8 Public Ways and Property, Chapter 6, Camping Regulations, Sections 8-6-1 through 8-6-10.
I have a question, just some further clarification.
Wait, do we have a
Paragraph in-
second?
Second.
Okay, now discussion. Do it.
There's a section of this document, it's 863F, talks about sanitation. How is sanitation intended to be handled? Is there, because this area that's being designated is right here, correct?
Eric, we still have our hand washing stations. And if it comes to we actually get permit, we get a porta potty until then.
And trash bins and,
Yep.
and the town will take care of that, like regular
Yep.
emptying, cleaning, all
Any other
Let
question?
me add to your discussion there for your consideration, just so that you understand the nature of this type of ordinance and the limitations thereon. So basically, the way I drafted this is to bring the town into compliance with the Ninth Circuit decision in Boise, Idaho, and the trend across the entire nation that you cannot criminalize the act of being homeless, but you can regulate where they can reside overnight, where they can rest. And the idea of this ordinance is to bring you guys into a form of compliance. And then I'm not saying you're going to impose burdens on these people, but you have certain requirements. I just spent 3 days at continuing legal education in Bozeman, and the attorney from Missoula, he showed slides of the homeless camping that they cleaned up underneath the reserve bridge in Missoula. 40 tons of garbage, all right, with needles, human waste, all that kind of stuff. It is such a problem that the sanitation companies, that use the porta potties will not even deliver porta potties to these areas, okay? Because they don't want to have to deal with hazardous waste, needles, drugs, medications, and, their equipment just gets completely trashed. So I guess what I'm saying is that you have an obligation to not criminalize the activity of being homeless, and but you can regulate where they can camp and for how long they could stay, right? And then what I attempted to do with this ordinance is make it such that they are required to maintain a sanitary site. You as a town do not have to provide them with that level of sanitation. Now, again, a lot of this stuff is constantly being challenged in courts, so you never know what's going to happen, right? But I mean, what are you supposed to do? If you allow overnight camping, are you supposed to bring them out heaters too in the winter? I mean, there's just so many levels of where this could go. The basic responsibility, though, is that you have to allow homeless people to sleep, basically camp on public grounds, unless you have shelters available to them. And you don't. Right? Does that clarify things for you?
Yep.
All right.
Plan, backup plan.
It's not an easy issue. It's not an easy issue. And every municipality across the country is dealing with this. What we're trying to do, though, is make it so that we don't have people camping on the sidewalks. They're not, spread out all over town. We actually have a designated area where they could be monitored, where we could supervise. You keep an eye on them. And if people are breaking the law, if they're acting out, if they're disorderly, if they're not maintaining a sanitary site, if they're using drugs, openly consuming alcohol, then you can have them removed. You don't have to tolerate the type of things that go on like in San Francisco or what happened out in Missoula.
Any other discussion?
So, well, yeah, I have a question. So they're not allowed to drink alcohol in,
No, open on, from this permit on that site, no.
this is technically government property, right? Kind of,
It's our,
it's town property, right? Is that, okay, because.
all right. Any other discussion? All right, calling the vote. Craig, you're up.
Yes. Aye.
I,
All right, motion carries. That'll go into readings. Last regular one of the evening. Where are we at? 593, 2023, resolution of intent to adopt Ennis Town ordinance. I didn't have a number because we're going to have no parking and snow removal. So I need to figure out ordering. So an ordinance adding watering restrictions to Title 10, Chapter 9. Look at watering. So basically, this sets people should water at night, not at middle of the day on the windiest day to conserve the water that we all share. And then it also sets stages. So at any point, Eric or Public Works Director of the future decides the pumps have run as long as they can run, or a pump goes out and a secondary is not available. There's separate stages for how much water we're using and what kind of crisis, for lack of better words, we're at. So, and then what is allowed during those times. I mean, it took us 9 months to get a pump. Yeah. I mean, both of them were running, but should had something had happened in between, there was no way for us to say, whoa, peeps, can you not wash your driveway today? Maybe save that for drinking. So that's what this document does. And then we still tried to allow for any, I don't know, hopefully we got it all in there, but like making sure you can still wash your boat. Most of the time it's like, if they catch an invasive species on your boat, they're going to wash it right there. But for some chance there's a water restriction day and you find one on your boat, you can still scrub it off. Whatever. Those kinds of things. We looked at pretty much everywhere in Montana and pulled this together. So
I like it. It's
public
comprehensive.
comment?
Do you have a copy of the?
Are these available online? I just down and not
Well, it's in the commission packet. It should, is how
Yeah,
they're
they
supposed
have
to.
Can you?
I'm still trying to figure out website thing and how to make it better.
Okay.
I want to like eventually, you know, the calendar that's there, find the calendar, you see what I'm saying? And then like, that's the meeting date. Here's all the information for it. But I haven't figured out how yet.
like right now, it's like.
Well, I'm under resolution.
Oh, here it is.
Okay.
I'm sitting here looking at it right now, I'm like, if I have an email from that, I can just.
But not these.
No, you gave my card to somebody else, remember?
Oh, really?
Pretty sure.
Not knowing exactly what's in the resolution, but I do fully support passing some kind of water restrictions. It seems like most people are totally clueless or unaware that there's any kind of water crisis, you use the word, in this town, this area, in this country, in this world. They see the river running through the middle of our town and they think, wow, there's just unlimited clean water here. Isn't this great? I know some people, maybe I think it's North 40, have deed restrictions that say they have to have landscaping, which means they probably have to feel like they have to water it. I knew somebody recently that lives in that area and they were going to do a zero-scape type thing, not plant thirsty grass and trees that really don't belong in the desert area. But truly, when you go by one of the biggest businesses in town and the guy's out there with a water hose washing down the gutter, not the sidewalk, he's in the street. And even today it was raining and they're out there washing down the parking lot. Makes 0 sense to anybody. I even called the business, and they said, I said, really nice, do y'all know there's a water crisis going on? Do you think it's really necessary to wash the street, knowing that right down the road there's gravel everywhere because we just had to replace everything, it's dusty? And, oh, we're supposed to do that, our corporate office. But they weren't even on their home property, they were in the street with a water hose trying to push gravel down it without even like sweeping first. And somebody needs to be empowered to stop and say, shut the thing off. You know, this is, and during the summer, you know, I was working over the Habitat houses and I see people's sprinklers going off all day, middle of the day, 90 degrees, wind blowing, whatever it was, and it's just, it's not even effective. It's on a timer and they're at work or something, I don't know. There's just some really clueless situations going on. You know, in the surrounding area, everybody has wells, and nobody even knows how much water they use in their well. Most people don't have a gauge that says, you used 2,000 extra gallons this month. You know, there's nothing that says that, like you don't get a bill that shows your usage or something. It's just pumping. And to me, that's a problem. That's probably more of a county thing, but it all affects the whole. I mean, if people can't tell there's a water crisis here, then that's a problem. Some kind of an awareness program about there is alternative landscape, xeriscapes. You just don't wash your car. You know, if you got to wash something off your boat, with a bucket of water, let the hose run down the driveway for 30 minutes while you're scrubbing something. It's a lot of common sense, but again, people just, you know, pass right by that and think, we got lots of water, we got a river. How could there possibly be a water crisis? So I appreciate y'all pushing something like this through.
Thanks. Any other public comment? That was twice, right? Last call for public comment. Commission, any corrections, additions? I think we drafted it or edited it, drafted it, edited it. But I've never lived anywhere with water restrictions, so. But apparently every town, I started looking, it was like, well, yeah, no, Kalispell, Whitefish, Anaconda, they pretty much, you just start going down the line. They all got something written.
Yeah, I have, and in fact, some of the surrounding area where I live was a lot of similar to BC ranches where there's large acreage and lots of, you know, horse property and so on. And the state had come through and said, all those people on wells will need to put a meter on their well. And then the state was going to find out how much water you're using. Why? Because they determined that the aquifer was actually a holding tank for the state. So you're using their water, the state's water, is how they approached it and started to enforce it. There's a lot of, from what I see in the resolution, there's a lot of subjective language in there. You know, reasonable, excessive use. It's not really quantified. The other, probably the biggest issue I have with it is, I think, I don't dispute the fact that we have a water problem and a water crisis. We certainly do. That's what we're trying to remedy. I think, from what I understand, that it's as a result of all the development that's been going on in the surrounding area that has certainly outpaced the water capabilities of the town. And so I think we're trying to catch up to that, if I understand the problem at a high level. So I don't dispute the fact that there should be some restrictions in place until we get our arms around the water problem. That is this new tank, the new wells. So we have the capacity of, once again, to support the town. But this resolution doesn't put any limit on the time frame. it's, once it's passed, it's forevermore, regardless of whether we have plenty of water or we're perpetually in a water shortage condition. The way the way I see it is, in fact, paragraph 9.4 or 10.9.4 says the following general restrictions are always in effect. Okay, but overall, there's nothing in there that has a time limit that says, for example, once we get a new water tank in place, once we get another well online, once we
So
have
do you think people are
capacity.
gonna, I feel like even if you have abundance, that doesn't mean that you should be wasteful. And I am seeing exactly the same thing. You do not need to water in August at 3 p.m. with a 90-mile-an-hour wind. It does absolutely nothing. And I don't care if you're at Niagara Falls, it's still a waste. And not just to the water itself, but to the other people that you're sharing the system to, because that pump takes power. So the cost will go down if you're all being responsible. So if we're sharing something, recognize that there's associated costs with being irresponsible, even in abundance. So that's where I was like, I don't know that you do a time frame, because even if you have everything in the world, if you look at the stages, they're based on volume and availability and if there's a failure. Have them. It's not a certain month to month or anything like that.
There's
The
a lot of restrictions that are always in effect, no matter what stage, the way this is written.
Just the general. The general provisions are the only ones that would always be in effect, which is water is prohibited between 10 and 6, and we can change that. Watering must not result in coverage of pavement areas and excess runoff. Hoses with positive shutoff, which means you have a sprayer on it, so when you're not playing with it or you forget it, or the kids were playing with it and forgot it in the yard, that it shuts off. And then the exceptions, like if you're adjusting the sprinklers, you got somebody out there, they're supervising it, it all works. Those are pretty basic. Don't waste it just because it exists.
Frank, do you feel like people in the town are getting penalized by the people in the county that waste water? Is that what you're saying?
No.
I don't think so, because we pay for every penny that we use.
Right, so
Because
if
the
you're,
people in the county, I think feel vulnerable to what's going on in the town, because the town, the pressure necessary for the well and the storage for the tank, and then you read that the tank's leaking 25% of the water, so it's just a big giant water waste just right a mile or two away from you, and you think it's like, oh, we gotta be on the same aquifer, so, it's just, I figured 25% based on that report that y'all had. I did some calculations. I think it was it less? I hope it's less.
It's less.
Regardless, there's a hole in the tank over here, and there's only so much filling it back up, so. But I think the people in the surrounding area worry about their well based on what's going on in town as well, so.
And vice versa.
And it goes both ways, that's why I was asking Craig. The town is being penalized, you can't water, why? Well, the people over there outside of town can, but I think it's a cooperative thing amongst the town and the county, and really an awareness campaign to say, people,
You live in a subalpine desert.
Well, I think,
but a lot of people are coming from other areas too that don't get that.
I think a good example you could look at is somebody who lives here for 2 weeks out of the year that has a sprinkler system running haywire, out of control, that got turned on by a random landscape company that, doesn't check anything to see what times it's running and what have you. So I don't know, I guess the ability to regulate that.
So I get that people need to be, responsible and considerate of the situation of neighbors and so on. I get that. It's, I understand that. But what I think this is doing is it's trying to basically legislate that responsibility. I think, and again, I do think there needs to be some water restrictions given the current conditions. That is, our water capacity can't handle it. But I think our water capacity can't handle it because I think that the surrounding growth is like far outpaced it.
Do you ever see, I mean, I don't think there's any shortage of that happening. Even if we got caught up to where we need to be, developments are still going to happen. We're still going to be behind.
So the infrastructure should, instead of the infrastructure chasing the growth, I think the growth should be either curtailed or held back and, and in line with the available infrastructure. So if the current infrastructure can't handle it, then that should be taken into consideration when it comes to growth.
Right.
But we are where we are right now. So I get that. As far as people, being wasteful and so on, people are probably gonna do that to a certain extent.
This gives us the ability to at least say something. Before it was like, could you be?
But that'll be reflected in everybody's water bill, right? If you're being wasteful with water, your bill's gonna go up. Wouldn't you say, hey, when you get that bill, say, hey, I got to do something to get the bill down?
The water bills in the summertime go up, skyrocket.
And I know
I
that means
did,
they're
but I
paying
knew
more
why.
into it, but
I sure did.
it really does weigh on the system in more ways than people think. Yes, you're paying for the water that you use, but we don't increase the rate during the summer. And if you're running those pumps 24/7, that is more wear and tear on that pump. $17,000 worth of more wear and tear.
Not to mention the electricity.
And the power that goes with it.
Do we anticipate that being the case when after we spend this $4 million and get a new tank and wells and so on? Or do you think that's going to continue? The running 24 hours and so on?
Help with the longevity. But then this also sets forth if something else happens. I really want to make sure that, and this gives us the fire reserve, that ability where we didn't set specific this number, the stages and the volume, set it so that we could put in place enough restrictions to always keep the fire reserve, no matter which tank, no matter which well, no matter what time of year. And if that's not the first priority, then I think we got our priorities out of line.
So I think what I would like to see in this is if we have a timeline for getting the new tank and well and capacity operational and going, whatever that timeline is, I would like to see that as the end date for this resolution with an ability to revisit it. And if we need to continue it, then the vote at that time would be to recontinue it. But to just pass this and say like forevermore, because these restrictions are going to be in place on the town because we didn't keep an eye on the amount of building that was going on or how rapid the building was going on.
It's not just those factors though, like very specifically in there, it says part of the evaluation is based on the drought information that's given from year to year. So no matter how big of a system we have, there's still drought that occurs. So the restrictions based on, I mean, I don't see how I could have written it any other way that would have.
I do know this with the water rights.
you're only allowed so much, to pump so much out of the ground. That's what your water rights are. Now you're going to look for another well, you're only gonna get what the population needs. That's all you're gonna get. You're not gonna get more. You're not gonna get-
So we're never gonna be so far ahead of the growth that we can plan for that. I mean. it
So
makes
that you can
sense
be
to me, yeah.
irresponsible. It's just irresponsible. Like it is.
It makes sense.
Every other creature in this valley can suffer from drought, and we can say, well, in 10 years, because we have an extra well, we can live high on the hog. It's just saying that
It did most of the other town codes. Was there an end date or? is
there's
that
not
just
an end
based
date.
on what it is?
Bozeman spent a lot of money, 15,000 on a 4-year drought study, and developed pretty much the exact same thing, because theirs are based off of reservoirs. Almost every town is based off of a reservoir. That's the hard part. So theirs isn't just capacity, it's what is the weather going to do? But the weather and what it does defines how much people are watering grass.
So
Is that a real something where 10 years from now you have everything in the world, so you go, well, everybody should have 25 square feet, perfectly blue grass, whatever, lawn? Like,
gross.
Corey, you make it.
I'm not kidding.
I love my part of lawn.
Are you thinking this could go away at some time? Is that your?
Why would it go away?
That's what I'm saying is this is basically saying we'll never have enough water. It's what, to handle the irresponsible people or wastefulness or so on. This is being in place because we're expecting that there's going to be good times and there's going to be bad times. So we're just going to.
I feel
Is that right?
I get what you're saying, but again,
Nikki?
Wait, Eric's talking.
If we're-
James,
If
think.
we're ahead of the game in one area, I know some, you don't need the restriction.
You do have some.
You have the general.
So.
Yes.
So
And
you
I'm not saying,
here's where we're kind
All right. So Craig feels there should be a end date.
that at which if there's still a problem, maybe not that time, or we have enough history behind it. It's really a thing that needs to be continued. We could revisit it, revote or vote to maybe change some of it.
Wouldn't it be like we always want to be?
I think this would be better in the better interest of the town for it to always be a little bit cautious and be aware.
Anytime we need it, maybe we are in serious drought. Right?
of in favor of conservative.
And the stages were also based on mechanical ability of the system. Should something fail? That's why 80% is a trigger point. Why mainline distribution is a trigger point. Why, where was the other one? Last one. Catastrophic failure. There's an earthquake. I don't know what would create a catastrophic failure. Something of that nature. It's not so specific that it slits your throat. There's enough leeway in there that you don't. A lot of the towns set dates, and they are forever. All of the towns are pretty much saying it's a resource that you need to be responsible in its use. So, I don't know. James.
Yes, thank you. So to the commissioner's concerns, the way I read this is that if you were to double your capacity tomorrow, you would still want to have a restriction that if you're reaching 80% of your system, you'd want to have some sort of restriction on water usage. It's so as you increase your supply, you still want to have some restrictions based on how much you have available. And that's what this seems to do. It seems to like slide along with whatever capacity you have. So, the question about, having this sort of thing sunset, I mean, maybe you put in the ordinance. I don't think it's necessary really, but you could say that it's effective for 10 years. And then the commission shall look at it again and reevaluate. But you're always free to reevaluate. You're always free to come back in and amend it or change it. I mean, you have the ability to do that if this is not working for you. Generally speaking, I don't really see any problems with this from a legal standpoint. There are a few spelling errors. If you bring it up on your system, you'll see ground cover should be 2 words. At the end there, you have devise where it should be device. And there's a grammatical error in the last provision about penalties as outlined as opposed to as outlined in. So, and just above that is where it says devise. I think you meant device. So, before it goes to the publishers, I would just go through there and do some further proofreading on that. But generally speaking, I mean, to have the ability to administer your water supply in order to prevent catastrophic failures, I mean, that's what you're basically trying to do here. I see that as a legitimate public purpose. I also see that the way you've defined essential use or wastewater really is the biggest issue here, water waste, and that not allowing water to just like run off onto sidewalks and things like that. I mean, that should always be in place. I don't see why that would be unreasonable to expect that people are responsible enough to know how to, irrigate or wash your car or something of that nature. So I don't know if that addresses the concerns that were expressed.
I think the idea is that the people are not responsible enough to know better about washing cars and so on. So
Then that's exactly why you would need something like this in effect.
Well,
So
and
if you
so
see
this,
somebody, so let's say Eric is running around, he's doing his public works thing and he happens to see somebody and their hose is just sitting there and the bucket's overflowing, the water's run down the street. He'd go over and say, hey, you're violating our water wasting restrictions, please, bring that under control. And if I see that again, I'm going to have, a notice of violation served on you. I mean, that's how you administer this sort of thing. You educate people on how to be responsible. And I think that's what you're trying to do here.
so with this, if the town council passed it, we also had flyers that were ready to go with it, that were like, welcome, summer's upon us. Please recognize that in 30 days, this comes into effect. And these are basically, please follow the town ordinance or you get a visit.
I like the communication. I think that's great.
Sure.
Yes.
Definitely. Some kind of education.
Mhm.
You have to.
Mhm.
You know,
The flyers that Bozeman designed, something exactly like that. And we try to make it that we were 100% compliant as a town with our own regulations. Like that's where you saw where the town parks had certain restrictions and everything else. So we're playing by the same rules that we're asking everybody else to play by. All right. comment. Any other?
I guess,
I gotta
I,
fix.
I feel like what Craig is trying to address is maybe, so we're putting restrictions in place, and if we have any other restrictions that we want to do, or any other laws that we want to put in place that restrict how the public behaves, is there any way we can put a reminder to like maybe revisit this later? Maybe possibly remove that restriction? Is that, or?
That's kind of what I'm, well, sort of. What I was, where I was going with it was, it would be in place up to a particular point in time, and then it would expire. And then if we wanted to continue it, we could vote to continue it. Or if we wanted to continue it with changes, we could vote to continue with changes. I think what you're saying is that we get to a certain point and then we decide whether or not we wanted to change anything in it. And if we did, we would. And if we didn't, then it would just continue on as is. So the difference is I'm advocating for an end date on it that's based on where we think we're going to be with with water, the new water system, there's a timeline that's associated with that. But that was my whole point.
Similar to the 5-year street ordinance maintenance one that we put in, that it ended at the end of 5 years, and then we had to vote to either continue it or shut it down. Because that one was just gonna, it ended at the end of 5 years. And it was $75 per lot. You guys remember that?
Mhm.
Okay, that one, it ended at the end of 5 years. Unless we wanted to continue it.
There's all kinds of them. There was also this motorized
Oh, yeah.
licensed
Oh, yeah, that one. That was after 1 year.
that was good for a year, and guess what? It never got put back on an agenda. And if I'm being frank, if you want to, how many of you read the entire book? Right? So are you going to write in the ordinance that you've read that in 10 years expect somebody to read through the whole book? I mean, I will be honest. I've spent a lot of time in zoning, a lot of time in sewer. Not a lot in motor vehicles whatsoever. I've read 1 all the way through, 1, 2, 3, 4. Really skipped through some animals, don't know. But what I'm saying is,
Are you thinking it's just gonna be forgotten and just stay in place?
Well, the way it's,
Well, I think it should be stated. I think it
the
should
way
always
it's
be
written
in
is
place.
it will stay in place.
Mhm.
At the very least with the standard restrictions, time of day and so on.
we've
So
changed
why-
how many ordinances over the last year? That's the whole point, is like you go through and say, does this fit us now? Is there something that needs to be completely revisited? That's kind of what the council's job is. Like, what do we need to get ahead of? What's coming down the pike that we never would have thought of? What is huckstering out of existence? You see what I'm saying? We had hucksters in our business licenses. They don't exist. Part of it is going through all the time. We adapted the wastewater,
I
the
think there's-
pre-treatment. It's what legislation does, is look at what's there and say, is it still appropriate for what the town needs now?
That's a good question. When it says all outdoor watering is prohibited. So water, are you talking about watering lawns? Are you talking about pressure washing your house? Are you talking about washing your car?
On stage 4,
Just a
10.9.4A.
Because someone could interpret watering as, like the guy washing down the street, I'm not watering, I'm washing the street down. Are we gonna be splitting hairs like that? And then Eric's like, oh, okay. You're right, it doesn't say not to wash the street down. I mean,
10.9.4A.
1A. A1.
Right, but then you go down, continue reading and it lists out most every essential use, excessive water use, landscaping. That's what I mean. I think it covers all the bases. I don't know. I thought so too.
So you have covered a lot in your definitions. Unfortunately, you don't really have described in here what constitutes a violation. Except it seems implicit that if you're doing something in violation of a directive from the Public Works Director, that would constitute a violation, but that doesn't say that expressly. It also does not expressly state that excess watering is a violation in any stage, and it does not state clearly that water waste is always a violation at any stage. So I think the meaning and intent of this is good. You might want to just fix it up before you adopt it. And I'm sorry if that caused you some delay.
All right. So to this, we can adopt without a timeline. We can put a 10-year timeline on it. I find that anytime we complicate these documents, it doesn't serve us any real purpose. But that's small town USA and me.
Well, are we gonna put this on Google calendars for 10 years out and an alarm's gonna go off? We're gonna get reminded? Who's gonna?
The IA guys, the AI guys gonna remind cat box. You can write it right in the ordinance, must be reviewed, and it's like the motorized vehicle one. And
however many things did you discover when you were going through it that
it was only the motorized vehicle that had a time restriction on it. That was a year one. There's resolutions that had timelines on them, but that was the street maintenance, but that was adopted and extended.
So is it appropriate to table this until we get our wording? Are you worried about putting more wordage into it, or just you want to go with it? It makes sense to me as
I'm really happy with it.
I am too, as a small.
It's small, it's simple, it's basic. It says, please be kind, you are sharing a system.
Yeah. And I mean, if there's.
I didn't mean it like that. I mean, whatever. The birds need to drink too, but not from a garden hose.
I would think that most people that are actually paying their water bill are going to be on board with, oh yeah, maybe if I don't do that, then I won't have to pay as much. As far as penalties go.
Other towns, they had whole sections of like, if you violate each one of these, this is the fine, and this is the fine, and this is the fine, and this is the fine. And I don't think we need to get to, I don't see where money solves it. I mean, I guess you could, but the penalties now say, basically, if it gets to the ordinance violation, you can go see judge, whoever judges. And I kind of noticed if you throw a lot of attitude, like the rules don't apply to me, judges don't seem to like that, and then yes, you can have financial penalty, but it's deemed by the judge, not by legislature, which in my mind kind of goes that way. Are you going to be respectful of the system, or are you going to be disrespectful of the system? Do you want to tell him to off? It's my water and I pay for it, then.
We had brought up who was going to enforce, and it basically came down to, it'd be whoever's head of the maintenance department, it is his call to determine what's considered excess and what is a violation. And a trail issue warning, so it was in the minutes during one of our last meetings. That it would be up to Eric's interpretation.
Or his staff.
Yeah.
Should we put the word ruckus in there?
Slingshot. Slingshot. Okay.
Okay.
So that's where I'm at with it. I could be
Right.
wrong.
I'm on the same page, small town.
I'm up for whatever.
I think ultimately we don't want it to go away. Like if we were to put like 10 years on it and it went away and we didn't have it in place, Eric was unable to enforce it because we failed to review this thing.
And then you have the millennials.
Yeah, accountability's getting less. by
There's
the
two
day.
sides
You can always
to it.
repeal it. You can always, there's not one portion in here that if we went through public hearing, we couldn't repeal.
Yeah.
You have to have a basis for why you're repealing it. So findings, right? That's why when we go through ordinance, we have findings. So you would have to prove that the town and its system has no negative effect of watering all you want any day of the week, all the time. And if you can find that there's no negative repercussions to running that system in that fashion, I think you're probably drinking something, not water. It will always cost to not have restrictions, an unnecessary cost. All right.
I moved to approve. I don't know if we're there yet. But I'm
Okay, she's doing it.
Okay.
Nikki's,
Resolution 593-2023, legislative resolution to adopt Ennis Town ordinance add watering restrictions to Title 10, Chapter 9.
Nikki's got it.
Randy, did you do the last one?
I think so, yeah.
Aye.
No, I mean,
Just a second.
Oh,
Somebody's got
I
it.
second.
or it dies. All right. Do we, any other further discussion?
It's so, town attorney. Is it enforceable? Did I miss something? But we're hoping it doesn't get to that point where they have to actually go in front of. Yeah. Water to.
Can I,
I mean, I'm
can I ask you something? Nikki?
What you got?
So if it comes down to me having to try to enforce one of these provisions here, what is the nature of a water shortage? The water shortage is not defined up in your definitions, but it appears in conditions. And then you have another thing called
You
drought.
also didn't want to review this document or prepare it because you said you weren't qualified.
I didn't know this was what you were working on, Nikki.
So we'll work session this, I guess, and try and fix it and hope that there's not a drought this year. Unless we're just going to call the vote and go with it how it is and hope that at least an ability to
Have the restriction.
When you get into the public comment or the public hearing sections, you can update at that point, right?
We have to go through three public hearings.
Right.
Mhm.
So move forward and you can still. Right.
All right, let's roll.
We're rolling it. Tina.
Oh, we seconded. Am I aye? Aye.
Aye.
You can say no.
No, for the reasons that I mentioned.
That's totally justified and respected.
Gary's.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Department reports. Karen.
I actually, we'll go to
Most of this programming, yeah, if you have any questions, just let me know. It's all general programming, things coming up. I'm just gonna stay here and use your mic if that's okay. I do have a question for, and I'm not sure who it's for. I've had a couple of members of the public tell me that the library's in charge of the gazebo.
You too, huh?
So I just am requesting some clarification on that, if it's an agenda item for another month or.
Okay.
I just would like to know.
We
I
found
would
a
just like-
resolution that said that it was for the Arts Association. Long dig through the gazebo. And at some point, it was resolved that the Art Association was in charge of the gazebo. Nobody from the Art Association, when I contacted them last year, had any idea about this.
Are you talking the park on Main Street?
Yes. And then,
And that's fine. I just want some clarification. Okay,
Yeah.
that'd be great. So that's what I'm requesting, is that that can be resolved so I'm aware of my responsibilities. Okay, thanks.
do you,
Yeah, do you have any questions?
that was it.
And I will comment on just we had a garden and horticulture workshop that was outstanding. We had a couple of specialists from MSU, extension agents there, and we did talk quite a bit about a reduced water garden system. We talked about xeriscapes, we talked about native plant gardens, and I put the bug in their ear about working with Eric, and I'm happy to work on this, an Ennis specific project that dovetails with your water restrictions as a awareness campaign. So just throw that out.
Who was the individual?
Kalina Miller and Abby Said.
I just called her.
Yeah, Kalina and I work a lot together. And we have several master gardeners in the area. We all work as a group. So, yeah, I'm happy to help wherever I can.
Would she be the lady for, so the town has 5 parks, the North 40 parks. So I reached out to the MSU extension office over in Gallatin County. I didn't know we had one for this
Madison
county.
Jefferson.
Yeah, so I just called Kalina today, just left her a message, but about like planting of those areas or creating how those would look ultimately from a sustainable standpoint. I
Yeah,
guess.
she's a great resource.
Cool.
That was a good move in my opinion. Yeah. So, moving forward, yeah, if there's anything I can do in the educational campaign, just let me know.
You're awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Got John's report. Questions, comments? I think they were out torch running. No, I don't know if Matt was out torch running. Just so I have to say, I'm not a runner, so I appreciate anybody that's willing to run 4 miles for anything. Because I don't run down the block for a candy bar. So thank you, Matt, for carrying the torch for 3 to 4 miles over my elder. Because I don't run. Yeah, Special Olympics torch run. So.
If I'm running, y'all better be running too, just something's
Sort of. Not happening.
Yeah, you can outrun me, you're good.
I think Eric was chaotic this week, had a lot going on. So pretty much anything else. Where else was he at? Yeah. The lagoon and the sewer line are our next projects. There's a valve at the lagoon that the winter wasn't nice to. That needs repaired. And then the line, which did he say? Sewer line behind the Long Branch, that alleyway.
Say that again.
There's no one behind the wall, right?
Oh, yeah.
is not on grade. So we're going to tackle that as the sewer project.
Oh, never mind.
That's an upcoming project.
Eric spent yesterday up at the county trying to look at all the easements for that alley so that we knew that we were in line for putting that as a proper grade and redoing that sewer line. She's like,
When's that happening?
he's going through the easements right now to make sure where we're, looked like there was stuff, a building or garage.
A whole row of storage buildings.
Some stuff. So
Going up
he's in
back
that
there?
process.
No, they're out, they.
And
put up.
something about
I
the
don't know.
camera doesn't work deep enough for where part of this is.
But he's on.
Sewer is
Heard part of
not.
that too, yeah. And when's Main Street getting fixed up?
18th of May
That's scheduled.
is scheduled, depending on any weather, but that's the
Yeah,
day.
it's supposed to be really nice next week.
So
And that includes, where between my home in Montana and
the sidewalk portion.
that area, all of that, everything is gonna be fixed up, which is.
I know the High Country is scheduled for the 18th. I don't know when Chief Croy is scheduled for the sidewalk. Is who we contacted to do the sidewalk portion.
I'm sure he's on it, that and everything else.
And it was cheaper to wait and do both of them at the same time, volume wise. Both cuts.
Can I ask for excavating? Do we typically just send out an email to anybody, especially like emergency stuff, like whoever is willing to come in? I know we have like 4 companies here in town. Or how does that typically get handled?
I leave that up to Eric in contract.
So if Eric's not getting along with the current guy, then he goes with somebody else.
And a lot of his decision making is based on price and compliance in projects. So. I guess we could always do that way. Some of them might be hard to bid, but I don't know. You'd send an email but how do you, I guess that would be a way to do
Probably
it.
should have a process though, and make sure that we are being charged what's reasonable and customary.
I think
We
he
use,
shops around.
Yeah, and come time for emergency, you have to.
You
just-
gotta have who you can get,
Yeah.
but
So,
it does seem to always be the same.
we use, yep. There's a lot of that and our project. So I love our project that always turns into projects. That's a lot of the problem is a company that's willing to be like, hey, we'll just hang out for 3 or 4 days to see how this goes. So, but I can ask them if you'd like to send an email. All 4 companies. I know 2 assisted us with the original, the first cut across the road. So, all right. What else? Susie was pulling teeth or capping teeth or something. So she didn't know if she was going to be able to talk tonight. That was what I got, was the message like, I'll try to be online.
Hi, Mike.
So she's not. So I'm going to say her face is not there. Clerk.
Of one, so the 7-person board, what's that called?
Planning board.
The planning board. When do those guys come online, or individuals?
There is,
I saw your email about, reaching out to all the members and trying to get, nail down a date for, those 3 days. That's something else I think you're referring to, what you're probably asking.
he's,
So,
what he says.
yeah, I don't, can you repeat the question?
Where are we at with it? So that's where we're at, is training.
That's pretty much it, yeah. So, since last meeting.
Oh, yeah, you're on it.
Yeah. So since last meeting, not much has transpired. There's, reached out to a couple people, but I saw Nikki's email from, was it Monday or Tuesday?
Yeah.
Earlier this week, to again, reach out to them for training and come up with some dates.
And then if,
all or most could make, and then go from there as far as planning.
when we picked the date, I thought at the same time I'd try and get John here so we could set them up with their town emails. They won't have those. And Forrest is planning an afternoon.
Okay.
I didn't know if you guys wanted to make it an all-day thing. And if you picked a date, I could see if Dan was available from MSU's local government to come and do like a morning section. But I didn't.
Dan Clark?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your feelings on all day versus half day.
If it's a half day, would it be 2 half days or 1 full day?
Yes, whatever you want.
Oh, okay.
That's what I'm trying to, I'm like, whichever works for your.
I'll pose that question to all the
If they
all the
want to
members,
just knock
but
it out as a training day
I
or.
suspect that would be my preference, if you just pick one day and just get it done in a day rather than trying to schedule a couple of days.
Okay.
If that's possible, that'd be my preference.
Okay. Will you add that in your shootout on half a day or 2 half days or 1 full day?
Sure.
And is that just a flat rate? Like, could I come to it?
Yes, you can come to it.
Yes. I want to go too.
We're all gonna go hang out. It'll be a packed room.
Is anybody going to Bill on Tuesday?
What is that training on?
That's the summit,
That's the
municipal summit.
municipal summits. And
That's the closest one.
I'm going. When is that?
Yeah, but you're supposed to be registered already.
It's too late.
Good.
What's that?
What is it?
They go over.
You're
the
supposed to
numbers,
register.
show up, stuff,
See what I was
and,
doing?
it's coming down the pipe.
The one that's really doing it is. Shh.
Show up.
Are you going to it?
And there's more of them available. They do them all summer.
But I don't have, I'm not planning to right now, but I would just show up. I'm not gonna turn my head. It's here.
Ginger, clerks. Anything else? So excited. House Bill 76. Did you see that? So with House Bill 76, they combined all of our gas tax stuff. So we no longer have to do the Barca resolution every year and file the little report and do the match fund thing. I was excited for her because I don't do any of those reports and I don't write the resolution. I don't do any of that, but I was excited for her. Because that got signed this week.
If it leaves you any sanity, we're happy.
It's one less thing.
Just a different system or way of doing it to learn. Because
But
they'll come up
one.
with something.
But 1 instead of 3.
Yeah. It'll be nice. Other than that.
Legal. Oh, sorry.
It's budget hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you have any thoughts, ideas,
Yes.
We're still gonna do a work session on that.
yes. Multiple. I think we're going to break it down into multiples.
That'd be good. That'd be great.
On what?
Budget, multiples.
Thank you.
Legal. James
Yes,
adjourned.
So you have on your legal agenda or legislative agenda, you still have your short-term rentals that you need to work on. Um, We just identified public assembly legislation, something that should deal with that. You've got broadband access issue that was, you might want to turn down my volume in your area there, because I'm hearing myself coming back, but as long as you could hear me fine, that's okay. Uh, So I shared with Mayor Nicky a slideshow presentation that we received for continuing legal education that deals with broadband access. Broadband access, broadly defined, means cable access, cell towers, tall and small. And what happens is if you don't have some type of zoning restrictions in place, these communication companies will come into your town. They'll just start putting up towers and they'll claim that they have the right to do it under federal law or some state law, and that the town is preempted from challenging anything that they want to put up. Their interest is not necessarily putting up beautiful small cell towers or aesthetically pleasing utility towers or installations. And I would encourage you all to look at the presentation, the slideshow um, documents that were presented to us. Nikki, if you'd forward that to the commissioners, then they'll understand what we're talking about.
It's
So
already
I
done.
would say you'd add that to your legislative agenda to start working on that as well. There was pending, and I don't know if this one was signed by the governor, but last Friday it was still pending, a state law amending zoning to allow ADUs, additional dwelling units, as of right. I raised the question. I said, so this basically does away with single-family residential zones? The answer was correct. Answer being provided by Kelly Lynch, the senior counsel for Montana Municipal Towns and Cities. And she spends months working with the legislature, so she was the one presenting us with all the legislative updates. An additional dwelling unit would be restricted to 75% of the size of the primary residence. And again, it's allowed as of right. Towns would not even be able to approve these structures based on aesthetics, designs, architecture. So again, I asked the question, so somebody could just come along, throw a tiny house in their backyard or a container home, and yes, that would be allowed as an additional dwelling unit. How might you regulate that? Through zoning. You might, again, regulate that through your short-term rental policy or your rental policy. So they might be able to put down their additional dwelling unit, but you could restrict it for the purposes of not having in everybody's backyard an Airbnb. Now, the reason why the legislation is coming out is because of the, let's say, affordable housing crisis or employment housing crisis. So instead of municipalities, cities, towns creating employment housing, they're allowing anybody who wants to put an additional dwelling unit in their backyard so that you could create this affordable housing or employee housing, basically doubling the density of your town. You could restrict these additional dwelling units not only from the standpoint of prohibiting or limiting the Airbnbs, but you could also perhaps limit the ability if you had a tighter zoning regulation regarding building coverage, allowable building coverage. I mean, they still have to fit within the setbacks that you create and your building coverage allowances. But it's an issue that you should certainly take a look at with Susie, maybe have Forrest take a look at it. What is your existing inventories as far as open space and building coverage in your residential zones? It's not going to be so much of a problem in areas where perhaps there are covenants, private covenants might be enforceable against this. But I would say that there's probably plenty of residential zoning district areas where this could create a density problem for you. And you're already experiencing, water supply issues. This is not going to help.
James, what did you say what did they define the accessory dwelling size as?
75% of the residents.
75% of the primary residence.
Size, yes.
So
If you have a 2,000 square foot house, you can have an ADU that's 1,500 square feet.
that's gonna fit on a lot with the setbacks, but it still has to meet the setback requirements.
It would still have to, yes, that's what I'm saying, that you could regulate based on setbacks and total coverage, total building coverage. I think that would set up a good challenge, that you'd say, yeah, you're entitled to an ADU, 75% of the size of your primary residence, but you've already used up all your allowable building coverage, so no, you can't put anything there. That requires, it requires studying your inventory of residential zones, what structures are existing, what building coverage is available for additional dwelling units.
So you're saying tie that into short-term rentals or zoning would be the two places.
I'm saying use both.
Both.
Use both.
Okay. Okay.
So James, what does that look like? The town of Ennis doesn't even have the term ADU defined in its glossary. So do we have to put a moratorium on building and then go and change our codes till we come up with acceptable zoning for ADUs?
The state legislature, if it gets signed by the governor, again, we have to do, I'm just alerting you to this because I only just learned about it on last Friday. So it's relatively new. So we need to track the legislation, see if it actually gets signed into law. If it does get signed into law, a moratorium might be possible, but they're defining it. I mean, this is top-down legislation. You cannot prohibit this as a town. You cannot prohibit it. It's going to be allowed as of right. But you can regulate.
You can't their definition or, gotcha.
Yeah, you're not going to be able, yeah, sure. You could adopt it as, yeah, we recognize state law. I mean, there's certain places where state law does preempt us. But if they're saying that municipalities, you cannot legally prohibit this, then that's what they've declared. So then you have to figure out how do you regulate it. And I'm just suggesting that the easiest ways to do it is to do an analysis of what your building coverage is. What are your existing setbacks? I mean, maybe you have to just like go in and say, we're increasing our setbacks in all these different residential zones and increasing the requirement for open space, which is another way of defining what your building coverage allowance is. And then, of course, look at it from a short-term rental issue as well. You want to regulate them. An additional dwelling unit doesn't give them the right to run it as an Airbnb. It just means that they have a right to have an additional dwelling unit.
Okay.
So I'm not proposing, a permanent solution tonight. I'm just bringing this stuff to you as, legal update from last Friday. Hot topic issues. You know, you're ahead of the curve right now, at least on the homelessness thing, you know, with your camping regulation. You're going to need to look at short-term rentals, this ADU legislation, and the broadband access, and public assembly, you know, regulating public assemblies of parades, events, protests, all that sort of thing.
Okay.
And James, is it your understanding that Governor Gianforte is actually for this? I feel like I've read something that suggests that.
I think that there's good support for it. I mean, when the legislature, you know, they go through this process, I mean, you have no idea what the level of review that they have to go through, the different committees and the drafting, and it goes back down, and then the rewrites, and then, you know, third reading in each house, you know, in the House and then in the Senate, and then they join their drafts together, and then they, you know, combine all that, and then it gets read again, and yeah, by the time something like this gets up to the governor's desk, it's got a good chance of being signed. They're also creating an entire new process for zoning in the class 1 and 2 cities. You know, it doesn't apply to Ennis, but they're basically requiring a total rewrite of the existing zoning enabling act in the state law. So the cities like Missoula, Bozeman, Helena, Great Falls, Billings, and a few others, they're going to have a lot of work for themselves to do. They have to reestablish their growth policies and create all new types of zoning. But, you know, there is an option that the town of Ennis could get into that style of zoning as well. I haven't decided whether that's something that you want to do or not, though. It basically what it does is it does away with your zoning board of appeals and your planning board, and it combines that. And see, like right now in Bozeman, Gallatin County, they have a combined planning commission, zoning planning commission, then they have a planning board, and then they have these multiple boards of adjustment. So the legislature is saying for these larger cities and counties that we're going to do away with all those different various commissions. You're going to have just one basic zoning commission. So, you know, it's something to think about because, I mean, right now you've had problems staffing a planning board and a zoning board. And if you adopted this new zoning code, you just have one commission.
James, did they define in that like number of board, like,
How many people would be on the board?
yeah, like planning board by Montana code, which is what town code adopted, was the 7. And so like for the town to, you couldn't supersede that. A planning board has to be 7 because Montana code says it's 7, right?
Right.
So did they define the number for these large cities?
I believe they did. I'd have to look at it. It's either 5 or 7 members.
Oh, okay. That's, oh. I just find it funny that we still have a planning board and we're super tiny. It's required to have 7, and that class 1, 2, and 3 cities that have far more people to choose from they're going to combine that and they're going to have 7. So
Yeah, it doesn't make sense, but you have the ability to opt into this new style of zoning. They're just not requiring it. And yeah,
the
it
big
doesn't make
cities are
sense, but there's a lot of things that they do that don't make sense.
the big cities have to, though. The 1, 2, and 3 have to go to this format.
Yes, if they have 7,000 residents, any city with over 7,000 has to do this, and then any county that has over 70,000 is required to adopt this new style of zoning.
All right. Thank you, James.
Yes, thank you.
Commission. Corey, you want to start us off tonight?
Sure. So the tree board has scheduled a week. We don't have the date yet for the Arbor Day celebration. So basically the week of June 12th. And we're proposing planting a new tree in the town pump triangle. There's one dead one in there, and we're gonna pull that out, put a new one in. And then, honestly not sure what else we have on the agenda for the day, but the kids will be out of school. I'm not a very good parent. But what else? I'll wait till Nikki comes back for this one, but I was going to address the Montana Main Street item that she sent out to us all. Who Lisa Roberts previously was spearheading that item. Mikey Walters, the second mayor of Ennis in the last 6 months. For Sheridan,
Oh my God.
has just resigned. So be stress probably. Yeah. So be good to your mayor.
Feel bad. He's
I do too, because it's really, really.
Yeah. No, I think he did. So, so I was going to talk about Main Street. So you have the Main Street program, but I honestly don't think like aesthetics for the town needs to be a priority. I mean, I don't own a business on Main Street either, but I think our infrastructure needs to be the biggest driving force from here on out. Yeah, and I know I've brought up resort tax a gazillion times, but all this discussion about the short-term rentals and going around and identifying all of these businesses and getting their addresses and actually getting them to register is the appropriate way to do this. They'll get their business license, or we'll be in communication with them, and we're being proactive, not just say, hey, we've got this ordinance in place, like you should know about it. Like we need to go and basically track down all of these businesses. But back to resort tax, I would honestly love to get a board at least formed. I have both Scott Kelly and Joe Dillschneider are 100% on board, and just at least get the discussion moving forward of it. For us, our last monies, I wanted to talk to Colette before this meeting, but we put down $4,000 on 4 million, I think was what it was, and I would love to see us have more cash to be able to throw different directions. It just works exponentially with grants and whatever else, and every community around us, Big Sky, West Yellowstone, and Virginia City, all have resort taxes and all reap the benefits from it. And we're a gateway community to each one of these areas. And I went and got my hair cut the other day. I'm trying a new style.
Oh, so nice.
Um, and
Let me write that down.
Commissioner Hood is trying new hairstyle. But so I was talking with Pat, what's her last name? Pat Hamilton at the Magic Mirror, and she's like, we were just discussing what it would look like, and I'm like, it's totally customizable, whatever. But she's like, well, I know the state needs tax reform big time. Like we need a sales tax, but I don't want it because I have to do the paperwork for it. Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting that she actually like expressed those sentiments, but I view barbers as an essential business personally, and I don't feel that they would be susceptible to a resort tax, but what else?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
On the resort tax, so like what are the first 3, 5 steps? Get a board together? How do you see that?
I actually don't have my notes here, but ultimately education is the primary
So
thing.
get a board together and then just that board starts talking to people
Yeah,
and get them
just
on
start
board.
talking to people.
And then you're gonna educate people. What are they gonna ask you?
Yeah, you have to be able to answer those super
That's
difficult
what I'm
questions.
saying
that
right
you
here,
don't
right
want
now.
to.
Where are you gonna put the money? How does it go? Who's in charge of it? Those are gonna be the first questions that you're gonna have. What's your answer? So those are that. I mean, maybe the board, you form that first and,
Put together those bullet points so that
but do you have a plan? How much goes into administration? Where does that administration go? Who's in charge of that? Those are, if I was to do it, I would start by talking with the people that have been through this before and say, how did that go and what went well and what didn't go well? You do a little after action review on the last multiple failures before you dive right into another one.
Oh, come on, I really thought you wanted to die.
I do love it, but, and you need to not just say where the money's going, but in what ways it saves. The county right now, I mean, don't quote me for sure, but when I was talking with Sheriff Hedges, Madison County has to contract out over $250,000 to have inmates at other locations, plus the time of an officer to go over and take the said person and then to haul them back, plus the fuel and the mileage for that. So they never mentioned any of that really that I recall when they were saying, let's build a new courthouse. Right? So everybody's like, that's really expensive. Cool. I think we probably could have paid for it by now with what we've spent paying Gallatin. So I'm just saying, very, very thorough in the resort tax, not just what you're spending it on, but also identify ways that it saves. And you really need to identify the property tax and the amount that you can credit back. Whitefish, the first time went through, it barely passed because they did an initial 1% resort tax. Barely passed. And then in 10 years, you can reevaluate it. It's only good for 10 years. And then it passed by 80% the second time. So.
At 4%. Probably.
At 4% is what they went for.
and the max is 5.
No,
4.
max is 4.
Max is 4.
So, and there was a company hired last time to assist with it, and
Was that for the town last time, a company?
Oh, it was an individual lady, that's all she
Yeah, I think making it familiar faces is, yeah, good thing. Yeah, there's just whatever. Obviously, there's a lot of concern with water right now. Willie's, I ran into Willie out and about the other day, and yeah, obviously it's just like they're running. I don't know if anybody else knows this, but they're running 24-hour a day like whiskey production, so they require water for cooling of these vats. I'm not sure the whole process, but it's yeah, they lose product. It's costs these businesses money, and it's yeah.
And they just doubled down today. They're working twice as many employees.
To make up for demand.
They've got the tab in them, and it's messed up. So, it's all hands on deck.
Yeah. So.
What else you got?
That's it. We haven't had any more semi crashes in town. The light seems to be working.
Knock on wood.
That's
Knock on wood.
better knock on wood.
Real.
Okay, Brandy, what you got?
Canberra, the one that I got as well, I received the same concern about the town not owning the gazebo, and that they'll gotten the information that the library had, so I was gonna ask you.
The town, what, never mind. We'll go.
I was gonna ask.
I'll look
if
at this.
You had gotten in contact with her, and she had come in and talked to you on Monday.
So this is one of those, yes, she did. And I said, at one point, I found a resolution that said the art association was in charge of it. And there's nothing since then. Absolutely nothing since then. So these,
That's when they put that initial map in there.
yes. And they were to upkeep it.
Well, now, it's been 11 years, and they want to redo it, but they would like to know if the town would pay them to redo that map.
Yes, and
The lady that did it the first time.
yes, there's two people that did it the first time, and they hold the keys, which, again, if it,
Why do they need a key to it?
Gina and Joe did the first.
Gina and
Yeah.
Joe did the first.
So,
but yeah, they wanted to do that this summer and said, I want the money for the metal to have it printed on, and we'd like to have railings put on the gazebo and the gazebo repainted. And I'm like, it's May. Parks budget finishes up its season in July, and there's enough in there to mow the lawns.
So on that note, I have some ideas. If you can resolve ownership, I have some ideas about how to accomplish the rest. The town owns it.
Yeah,
Okay.
the town owns. But it's one of those things, like, it just got swept underneath as far as who was in charge of what when. You start with really gung-ho projects, and then, unless it's a very established group, it can lose its momentum. Somebody said that to me today. Somebody said, oh, what was it? Everybody else got busy dying and I'm still here. And I'm like, ouch, that's a horrible way of looking at it, but I get it. So I like that. We'll work on the gazebo, the park thing.
I think that's all I got.
It's a perfect budget thing as we go into budget.
I was trying to say there wasn't anything there.
It's this park and there's enough money to mow.
I was looking at it the other day, because I had a view of it, and I was thinking, we could use a paint job. Do Boy Scouts. I mean, there's big service projects and stuff, but it sounds like here.
It's not that complicated. We'll get through it.
But I also think it's a city and we're not a city.
That's all I had.
Nikki, do you want me to skip you since you're reading those? We can go to Tina and you can come back.
Nope, I got it, I'll come back here.
She's on it.
Okay, so I did our homework. I found 25 short-term rentals in town and then another 6 that are rented out through Rainbow Valley Lodge, but are technically in town. A couple of them are like the homestead. They run them through the homestead. So, yeah, but there's a couple like, I know one that's not technically in town limits, even though it's right smack dab in the middle of town, but our funky lines are, so she's exempt. I have most addresses, they're popping up everywhere. That one back behind the pharmacy, you were here, you approved it, but I don't think we had approved it yet, but
Berry Pine, the house in
No,
Berry Pine.
nope, a new guy, I think he bought part of Baker's property and now that is up on VRBO's, for a fishing lodge. So, I don't know, there's a lot, I think, and I looked into Bozeman, theirs is ridiculous. I think zoning is also the way to do it. I don't remember what I wrote these down for, but LCD would be, I think, appropriate to have them, but not in CCR. I think they should not be permitted in commercial, yeah. And housing needs assessment. I wrote, our Bozeman had done their housing needs assessment, and so I need to know how maybe we can.
So I sent you a very, very large file and
I didn't go through it because I didn't have access and I didn't request it.
did it do the weird access thing?
You put it up on put it on the commissions. It's out to the world, I got it, yeah. So.
Yeah, it was the final adopted by the county and it is 454 pages.
Oh, yeah, I read it, but I don't have that big fund.
I know, that was
I
my.
didn't realize that, and I printed it along with that packet that you have. So it's sitting in there on the desk.
We'll get a binder so that people can check it out.
Yeah.
So Madison County has already finished their assessment. They went through draft and then the commissioners adopted it. So it's official county accepted document. So it's all 454 pages of it. And they have that housing assessment complete.
Okay.
And they broke it down by area. So yes, it's intimidating, but if you like go, I'm not going to look at Pony today. It's a little less intimidating. But they had, I don't know, they had more than 23. And I was going to call highlight and see how they identified, because they had short term, how many short terms were identified. But I don't know how they identified them or what area they used. If it's, you know what I mean? Just like you said, there's something in that weird boundary.
Yeah, I didn't go like through BRB. I went on the website and looked at like where things were. And I could pinpoint pretty much everything right where it was. But I didn't call them or go to the county for their list or whatever. So yes, we do need to work on short-term rentals. And yes, we are working on short-term rentals. Of the 25, I think I need to give you that list. Okay. That would be good.
We know there's 6 that
Are licensed, yeah.
still.
You have 25, you said?
Yes. In town plus the Senate. I don't know how that works because it's.
If they're located in city limits, they'll need to be licensed.
No matter what.
Yeah, no matter which business holds it, you're operating within, it's like town pump, like headquarters is not Ennis, but you operate within the town.
So
What?
Okay, so,
You have to get it approved through the council.
sometime if you can give me the list, then I'll send it to the county, check and see which ones are already gone through their list.
How do you want me, do I need the physical address? Do I need the owner's name and physical address? How would you like my
Or
list
you talk to her.
to come over?
How did she do that? She said just call. I didn't ask that question.
And then I feel like she would just give you a yes, no, or something.
I would assume address.
Maybe property owner and address, I can
Mhm.
actual it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Great Library Board meeting, more strategic planning is done and on its way. We need to figure out who we need to, who's in charge of the power box issue. Or how we should go about.
Thank you, Nikki, I forgot about that.
Thank you.
And then also, Karen, you might have to remind me, but I have it written here, 3% annual raise, that was budgeted for, or will be budgeted for every year, correct?
Yeah, that's what it typically was between 2 and 3. Ginger's running numbers for me right now at
Okay. Okay.
4, 5,
Karen and I
3.
about that too.
Okay.
Um,
Power box. I don't even know.
there's a jazz concert on the 24th. Oh, that's, never mind, that's too far out. I think that's all I have. Okay.
Yes,
How's
Mary Nick.
How's the survey thing?
Good, we're getting quite a lot of responses. I still need to email it to John to get on the town website. So that's what, but it's going well, actually. It's been a great way to solicit public opinion.
I thought that was a really well put together, awesome survey.
Thank you. I like
It was like a lot of I mean, it was like, wow, a lot of valuable information all at once. Well done. I'm anxious to see how it all.
Yeah,
I'm
me
like,
too.
I want to know the answer to the question.
Yeah.
Nikki, what websites did you do Airbnb when you were looking?
I did
for this?
Airbnb and I did VRBO, and then there's a couple like off name ones like shorttermrental.com or something like that. And they pretty much had all the same thing. But then the ones for the Rainbow Valley, I think I just typed in Rainbow Valley Lodge or something, and it.
They just popped up
Forget
on
no
their,
addresses.
so their site is
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah,
their
so
way
it's
of-
like the double buck, one's at Morris Creek, C Bar 3, Morris Creek Highway 2 and 3, and, but I did notice that a couple of them were like the actual Ennis Homestead buildings in there, like it was odd. Yeah.
Well, that's, go ahead.
I was gonna say, is your list of 25 in a particular area, or is it?
All in
or is
town.
it just all in town?
It's actually all in
Town
town,
limits.
so like, the one that I know is not technically in city limits, but I believe most everything else is, because they're all lower Ennis proper. Not a lot, or not all of them, but most of them are. One behind the mortuary. Yeah, there's a lot.
Where's the one, just curious, that's not town?
Like get behind D&D in that little portion that's not technically town limits.
Like my Slade.
Yep,
that's-
that's on Slade.
Like my Slade that is Slade.
Yeah, that would be, can we,
And it needs to have the sewer and the water so that we can.
how would you go about doing something like that? Like if they sell, how would you do that?
To force them to get water and sewer.
Yeah.
You would have to forcibly annex in a
Oh,
portion. And you
We have
can't,
a bunch of information on that,
Oh, okay,
okay.
that I can share with you.
okay, that would be good. I mean, not, I don't want to go that way, but it also seems like a convenience for them too.
Yeah, but there's, yeah.
Old history.
That came down from the county.
Okay.
I'll get it pulled out so that everybody, I know Corey's seen it. I think you're going to be the only one.
You're the oldest one. I mean that like the longest running, that, however you want to say it. Longest running council person.
I just have a couple of concerned citizen
issues to report. Lynn Milliken was in the store, shopping, and she wanted to bring it to my attention that the sidewalks are a real issue on Main Street. She fell, unevenness, she fell, hurt her knee and tore her pants, and she just really thinks that town should be aware of how uneven the sidewalks are. And this wasn't due to any of our current messes from water issues. And then I stopped in the pharmacy, and Gail White, who lives on, would that be Third? South Third. And her basement, I guess, flooded in one of the, when was it?
Last spring.
Last spring, and anyhow, the repair was made, but the valve or I'm not sure, we drove by to kind of take a look at it and see whatever is sticking up out of the ground by the fire hydrant is a concern of hers, because the cars are turning on that little alley, and she's afraid that it's going to get hit and it's going to cause another flood, and she needs that to be looked at. And she has also talked to Eric. I was thinking Eric would still be here because she's talked to Eric, and she's very concerned. And I did drive by, and there are tire marks pretty close to it.
But the thing about it is, like, we had this whole discussion with MMIA about, you know how like the barriers around hydrants, you can't actually do that to protect the hydrant, because if somebody wrecks into that, you have created the ability for them to sustain more harm. So in other words, it sucks that people are bad drivers, but you have to kind of not protect your stuff because you're liable if they get hurt more by putting in a barrier.
Well, I think
Cool.
there's something else that's right in front of her, the fire hydrant right here on the corner.
No, I was gonna say put some hay bales around it.
Maybe.
Sure.
But anyways, that's what I have.
Okay. Good ones. I'll follow up because sidewalks was on Eric's list. That's, and it comes to it's the business owners to repair in front of.
The highway actually owns them, but the business owners are
Responsible for maintenance, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Isn't Grant, isn't grant funding available for that kind of stuff? Those kind of repairs?
Probably the guaranteed year, it's not on a highway.
That you actually have, because we don't own it, so
Yeah, touchy subject.
it's a very
Yeah.
weird,
So-
like we regulate it.
So is it actually DOT who would have to talk to those business owners? No.
No.
That would be my question. Does Eric walk it? DOT has put it on the town.
Town.
On the town, okay.
Yeah.
So Eric will walk and he'll go tell, like, Montana or Long Branch, or whoever it is to.
That's not why we do that.
It ends up, well, last time it was John. No, it wasn't. I can't remember when Kelly put them out. Was it Kelly? It was a while ago. It was Kelly, but it's been a while. Okay, so sidewalk letters. Sidewalk letters with the grease trap reminders. All right, Tina, that's all you had? Those two? Those two, okay. Craig, what you got?
No, hold on.
No, you had really good information.
Yeah, Tina, or Nikki probably has more information about short-term rentals. North of me, in that area that's north of Clark, but east or west of 287, where all that building and stuff is going in.
Mm-hmm.
Most of those are, well, the units that are inhabited right now are not short-term. They're mostly, as near as I can tell, they're long-term rentals, either owners or renters. But I know there are some
Did you find some?
A ton on notice, like, a ton on notice, but as far as the, like, back streets, not a ton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't go on Airbnb or VRBO, but it sounds like you found them or identified them.
Yeah,
You have some information.
but I mean,
on them.
they're finishing construction every day, so.
And they're
Popping up
digging
every
more
day.
holes every day for new ones too.
So we'll check with the county and then against our 6, and if they've gone through their inspection, then there's no reason to not say not in compliance. Like, here's your reminder, please remember that business licenses are due. And it's a good time of year for this because they're all gonna be due,
It's all your second notice, right?
yeah.
Uh-huh.
So supposedly, so Tony Treglia, I was talking with him the other day, and he is like, well, maybe it was Tony, I can't remember who it was, but they pay a bed tax to the county. So VRBO ultimately pays bed tax to the county. And he was suggesting that we put this on VRBO to somehow pay our town tax as well. If they're paying a county bed tax, it could.
Isn't that like a double taxation?
I think so.
So
You don't think you can do that.
It's not a business license, it's not a tax, but to say they have to do a percentage to the town.
Well, not a percentage, but that they would have to administer or make sure that they had a town license.
But-
Just like the hotels.
Right, but they currently pay that already.
Where does the bed tax get spent?
Supposedly that goes to the,
Tourism.
oh, does it go to the state?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's
Wow.
exactly where I was going with it. Like, it's already designated. The bed tax goes towards tourism.
But I'd be,
That's how the Montana Heritage Commission is founded. That is how all those ads, when you go other places, say visit Montana. That's how it's paid for.
So I probably just didn't pay very good attention to what you just said. Some places, like in other states, will do like a 13% tax on that, like different tax. I think it's qualified as like some different kind of tax. So we can't technically do that, right? The town couldn't technically tax the short-term rentals. 10%, don't know. I mean, I don't know how you do that, right?
what, an occupancy tax?
I guess, yeah.
I've heard it termed that before.
That's a great term. That's a great term. Occupancy tax?
But why?
As an alternative to it.
Business license?
Oh, no, not as an alternative to.
They do
Still want
both?
the business license.
In addition.
Why do they? But why? But why? Why? I feel like where do cows sleep? Where do frogs go in the winter? But why? But why? But why? But why?
Because
Right?
I think we should have a business license, but then I think the resort tax is really probably the answer to the bigger picture.
Okay.
Yeah.
But why? Like, I understand impact fees, like, right? That's what the impact fees, that makes sense to me. Like, you have a large,
I missed that.
no? Yes? Does that not make sense? Okay. There's gotta be a way. What?
Is there any way that Nikki, you sent Nikki, the VRBO stuff that you found?
Nothing, it's right here. It's written. Where'd you go? Oh, when I get it everything
Yeah, that
ready to
way,
go. Oh, yeah, sorry.
because you have to give it to the rest of the council so that if I wanted to do my own research, I'm not stepping, we're not,
Double doing,
yes. I don't want to get in trouble.
double, well, I got you.
Having an ongoing meeting, a
Gotcha.
running meeting. Does that make sense?
Yes, now I see where you're going with that.
Sorry.
All right. Anything else?
I did attend last week, just on Wednesday, the elected officials workshop in Bozeman.
How was that?
And actually, The first 2 hours and the last 2 hours were great. The 4 hours in between, not so much.
Okay.
So the first 2 hours were roles and responsibilities, and then governorship, which Dan Clark actually was there. I got to talk to him for a little bit afterwards. The employee handbooks, 2 hours on employee handbooks and 2 hours on preventing child abuse. I think really, I got a whole lot out of that could be applicable to kind of what we're doing here. But then the last 2 hours, Craig Erickson from Great West Engineering presented, and he was talking about grant applications and stuff. And he had a few points that I thought were pretty good with regard to making sure that your capital improvement plan and that you have the, the PER and the wastewater, the stuff that we already have.
We need to work on
but
capital
then-
improvement though. I'm glad you said that. We have capital improvements on that.
Capital improvement and growth policy, and annual financial report. All those documents need to be, or should be up to date when you're applying for a grant. And the grant should probably be targeted more towards something other than like residential, but should be with an eye towards job growth or safety or those sort of things when you're trying to apply for a grant. But yeah, it's pretty good points on it.
We got to do the growth policy next year. Okay.
I have one last question.
Yes.
Hey, Ginger, if we all want to go on Tuesday, can we all just show up and just not get food?
I don't think so, because they print for the number of.
And there's other ones. You're just gonna have to travel
And
further.
there's Plus they have limited space.
Yes.
Okay. What do I got going?
Motion to adjourn.
No, I'm on mayor's report. I mean, I guess
The mayor.
I really wanted to be out by 7:15. It was all going so well, and it didn't. So have all the data collected for the MOU with the sheriff's office as far as what our numbers are. And so getting ready to schedule with Duncan and why can I not? It's too late. Sheriff and deputy sheriff. Thank you. Error. I did not get the MOU done with the school. Like a while ago, there was little signs out there that said you could park your RV here. Yeah. So I was going to readdress that but then I'm trying to make it so that like, as part of the MOU release agreement, it says like no overnight camping because that was part of the reason the school didn't like it, was that it wasn't enforceable for John to say, get out.
Are you talking the parking lot in behind Town Pump, where that RV was parked?
No, the upper,
The elementary.
yeah, that by the elementary gym.
So are you saying you can or cannot?
Not overnight.
Not overnight.
That's what I was working on with the MOU, but I didn't get it done, and the school board meeting was last night. So Kyle said he would put me on the agenda for next month, so time's a ticking, get it done. That's what he said. So
Everything the sheriff looks good up.
we haven't even talked really other than, hi, we want to do your thing. So we had to pull out what exactly the town had paid over the last 3 years since the last MOU was done in 2018. So we pulled what had been paid, and then I pulled all the calls for all the PD's reports for those years and averaged the numbers of night calls, because that was the biggest concern of theirs, was the night coverage. And their numbers weren't matching what my numbers or the town's numbers are. So I think we have different district areas that we are saying are town. So I want to clarify that. I think. And go through that. And the dispatch is the primary concern. Dispatch, and we use their CGen. And all that got more expensive for them. So, well, I'm sure we'll figure it out. Worked on watering. Was sick one day. Feel like there was some other stuff. Golf course has approached the town about their water projects, and we're contacting DQ and trying to see what's best there.
Golf course as in.
The homeowners, no, HOA as a clarification, good point, because that's county versus whatever. So their tower needs repaired, and we're trying to figure out if we can help or not, or when you tie two systems together, what the DEQ says, and I don't know. Some people say you can do it, some people, it's never been done before is what we've now discovered. So let's always trudge through uncharted territory. So that's that.
Question.
Oh.
I'm glad you said that too.
Do we ever finish or where, do you not happen to know where we are in the whole lead pipe thing, you know?
We contacted the county because the county clerk and recorder's office have the ability to do printed labels, to have them print labels for us to do on cards. So that's where we're at with that. Get those, and they're all stuffed.
Not to be quite as easy as, but Maria's working on it.
Okay,
She's working on the labels.
the label part. The envelopes are all stuffed and ready to go. So the bank let us use their stuffer, and then it broke, and then Eric's family got, it's like my house. Statement time, kids, let's learn how to fold a trifold. It's fun. So.
I think I missed that. What are you doing, labels? Labels or what?
Address labels.
The lead pipe, service line.
Yes.
So that you're not handwriting addresses down for every, I mean, we can use utility building, but it goes to, not to the owner necessarily, but if we use the utility billing account system for the addresses, it's like the renters would get it and they'd be like, I don't care. It's not my house, and throw it away.
So Lioness Title has a thing where they can, a program where you can say, I want all the addresses in this area. Shoot, and it's on an Excel sheet.
Physical addresses or owner mail, owner address? Oh.
I bet you can use it.
See, she
I
has
don't know
all
how
of that
close,
stuff.
I don't know how close to done she is.
I bet Maria would have been like, that would have nice to know.
That was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. Sorry. Also, for the record, thanks for showing up to meetings. And
Hi.
hearing and having your input. Yeah, greatly appreciated. Especially this time.
I'm sure you miss having family time.
She used the bluegrass. I gave up bluegrass for y'all.
Oh, thank you.
That was
Did you
sacrifice. Confused about that.
Why did I say oh?
You're talking to me.
Did you go to the bluegrass?
I did.
Okay, whoa.
I'm sorry.
Applicants, no. Applicants, no. We're gonna expand the range and try other things. And reminder that you are up this year. So filing must be complete by June 19th. Make sure to check all your boxes and we'll keep your seat warm.
Did you get yours notarized and back into the county?
Yeah. Lightning fast.
Okay.
We'd love
So-
to have all of you.
What do I need to do?
I have no idea.
What
sir.
do I need to do?
I think you just have to go to, does Chris just need to go to BC?
Yes.
That's it?
Talk to Corey. He just had all of his
Okay.
stuff notarized.
I actually didn't get mine notarized, but they did it over the phone somehow.
Oh, when I checked, when I called to see who had filed, they said yours was not complete because it was not notarized.
Yep, and then I called in to Allison Elser it might have been an illegal maneuver, but I'm working on our house right now, so.
No.
Whoops, we turn that off. I'll call and text tomorrow.
Who in BC?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's all I got.
This is closed. Flood or something.
All right, claims. Claims. Okay. Discussion, question, good? I can't remember where we're at.
What are we?
Claims.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. Second? I. Thank you.
Go over and file a couple of things. I think I can pick paperwork up for you. That, like an application or papers for filing.
If you like, or I can make a trip out to BC. So, what's the worst that can happen if I don't file?
If you don't file, then you don't get to come back.
Oh, really? You're teasing me again.
All right.
But how are we gonna, I mean, that's a good question, that's a valid question, because, I mean, well, if somebody else runs and you're not on the ballot, they would obviously be insured and you would not. But because there's 3 spots on the ballot.
I suspect Ted's probably, Fan Mountain is probably gonna try for it again.
No, I can't. I'm not allowed to fly across it because it's still all stable. No, seriously, I'm not allowed to fly. I'm serious. Not allow me to fly across it. Okay. Ready? You can go. Yes. Cool. I don't recommend some of the newer Avengers. Oh, I haven't. I don't. You always do. Of course, we have our other marbles, and then you go, man, I really don't really know what I. All right. I should have really said we should go over the watering thing so that we can match up. Is that all about? Oh, wait, no. Here's our next one. Hey, Amy, are we having another work session? Just one? Too far. Is that enough